got 17 pieces of concept art for the Drunken Boat book. Illustrations. These are just ideas to help me to see how I'm going to approach the artwork for the book. So there's some things that I've learned, things I'm not going to do, things that I definitely want to use in the book with the concept art. So let's just go through what I have right now quickly. There's more that I'm working on that it's not finished yet, but these are the ones that are finished, and it will be at the Drunken Boat Art Show on October 29th, 2022. So we have Abyss here. This is acrylic on illustration board, kind of an abstract piece. There's a line in the poem that talks about an abyss, a dark abyss that he's fallen into. What I like about this is I painted on tracing paper some of these rocks, and then I pressed it onto the illustration. So I didn't brush it on, and it gave it kind of a printed look that I couldn't have got any other way. So I like this. I'll probably be using that in the book. Now we have Blindsided. This is charcoal and acrylic on illustration board. I like charcoal. This does have a look of drawings at the late 1800s, which is when this story takes place. There's also a lot of action and chaos here, with the splashes and everything, and a little bit of color. So I like this. I like the box that I've put around it. I've done that every once in a while, but I don't think I'm going to use the box idea on any illustration in the book. I think the paintings or drawings should just bleed off the pages. Cascade 1. This right here, acrylic and charcoal on paper. Started off, this was just going to be a charcoal drawing on paper, and then I decided to add color, so I used acrylic. And here's what I learned here is I'm not going to use paper on any of the illustrations for the book. It's all going to be on illustration board, because the amount of water I use for painting just really warped this paper, and I don't like that at all. So that's what I learned. It's going to be on illustration board only. Castaway, this was an experiment just to see what I could do with waves and water coming up on a beach without photo reference. So this is all just free flow. I think it came out okay. I think I got a little ways to go in painting water, and there's going to be a lot of that with the boat illustrations, so I'm going to have to get really good at this by experimenting more. Ceiling Staring Back at Me, acrylic and colored pencil on paper. I really like this piece. This kind of brings together the man part of the poem and the boat part, because when a person gets drunk, it's almost like they're on a ship in stormy seas, which is what this poem is about. And we can see the water, the couches starting to sink into the water, and his hands in the water. But this was on paper, and there was a point where the warping got so bad I had to spray it with water with a squirt bottle and then iron it to try to flatten it out. So no more paper on these. Chasm 1, watercolor and acrylic on illustration board. Chasm 2, same. So there's lines in this poem about him falling into a deep chasm. These are ideas as to what might this chasm be. It's got to be dark. Chasm 2 has, instead of white splashes of water coming out of it, it's like a black ink. So just some ideas of what the chasm might be. Crest and Trough, acrylic on illustration board. This is a good one. I didn't use gesso as the base before the painting. I used matte gel, which is something that you mix with acrylic, but I just put it down like a gesso. And it gave this kind of a soft glow in places. So I like that look, and I might use it in the book somewhere. I also like these colors a lot. Gutter 1, this is an illustration to give me an idea of what the covers for the book might be like. This is matching up the man situation with the boat situation. So, you know, this dark alley, there's going to be the man staggering through the gutter, but right where that waterfall is, there's going to be the boat falling off the edge of the world into a dark abyss. I have another painting I've started already that has the boat going off the waterfall, but the front and back cover will be exactly the same, so you won't know which side to start on. There won't be a back cover, there'll be two fronts, and everything will be equal, so it'll be a complete loop, and you won't be able to figure out where to start, either with the boat or with the man. It could go either way. Passed Out, this is more of an abstract work, lots of color. This is something like once he gets way out there on drugs and alcohol, maybe this is his view of the world, that things start to look like this. Stair Situation 1, Stair Situation 2, Stair Situation 3. Part of the poem is a scene where he's trying to get down a flight of stairs, but he can't even comprehend which way is up because he is so intoxicated. So it's a real chore to figure out how to get to the bottom of the stairs. And these are ideas as to how it might be done. Stanza 18 is more of this is like an anchor right now for the concept art. I've used this in the advertising for the art show. And one of the things about this is it was painted on a gessoed illustration board with the entire stanza 18 written in the gesso while it was still wet. So what this did for me is it made me start thinking that all of the illustrations of the man will be gessoed illustration board with a certain type of texture, and all of the illustrations for the boat will be gessoed illustration board with a different type of texture, either brushed on or wiped on. In some way they'll be different, and they'll all be the same for that part of the story. So it'll give it a certain feeling when you're reading it in each direction. The Louche, this is a very quick painting that has to do with the alcohol absinthe. I like the colors, but this is just a concept as to what could be done when it comes to this scene with absinthe. The Morning Star. I think mostly what I learned here was the blues and the blacks. There'll be a color palette for each direction, whether you're following the story through the man's perspective or the boat's perspective, and there'll be a different color palette for each one. But somewhere in there that each one will overlap and they'll connect in some way. The outcome of captain and crew, what I learned here is instead of putting the gesso down, I used the matte gel, and I put it on too heavy. I like the texture for the artwork, but there were areas where there was just too much of this on, and if you're painting a sky, you don't want big blotches of base coat in the way on something like that. I approached that differently. I did all the color first, then I did the drawing over the top of the color instead of the other way around. That's not an approach I'm going to take. I learned I like it better when I do the drawing and then paint over it. So that's a quick overview of the concept art for the Drunken Boat book.